following episode is a continuation of our last episode for Passion's Sake Part 1. If you have not listened to that yet, we highly recommend that you do before continuing on with this one. Enjoy!
Lucky in our theater program that like the worst thing that's ever happened to me was not getting the role I wanted in something but still getting cast. You know, like even putting my work out there, like I did like a singing lesson on Instagram Live with my vocal teacher. And it was just to like help promote some of her stuff because she is looking for more students, so she does like lessons on live to make sure that like, just to get exposure so people see how she works to see if they want to take a class from her. And I did it with her. And, like, when you go on Instagram Live, everybody who follows you gets a notification for it. And so these two guys who, like, I don't even know anymore, I only follow them because we were in the same grade when I was living in London. They, like, came onto the live and, like, they weren't being mean towards me directly or what I was doing, but they were spamming the chat, trolling, saying some like inappropriate stuff, and like the feeling I got from that was like the worst I've ever felt about like putting myself out there with my art. And like knowing that it would be that times like 1,000 if I got big, like that terrifies me to the point where sometimes I'm like, what if I am just housewife, I will stay home, take care of the kids, you know, not to like be whatever, but like it scares me so much that like people could really hate on me that much and like give that much criticism, and sometimes with absolutely zero basis, but it would still like hit that hard. And then like a minor fear about my industry is that I'm really scared that I won't be able to raise my own kids, because if I'm a famous actress, wow.
No, but that's a valid thing to say.
Or, like, if I'm on Broadway, like, your shows are at, like, 8 at night. That's when kids go to bed. Lauren and I have actually talked about this a lot for both of us because of the nature of what we both want to do. Like, I kind of want to be, like, a young mother. Like, I want to be decently young when I have my kids. I'm really scared that I won't be able to, like, raise them.
Like, do both.
Yeah. Like, how can I have my career when I'm, like, jetting off to wherever to go on set and still like raise my kids and let them have a stable like household and like a life in one place where they get to be like normal people, you know? Yeah.
I think a lot of those viewers like also apply to us, you know? And like when you brought up kids, I thought you were gonna say that like once you become famous, your kids kind of like get put under a spotlight, and it's something that they don't choose, right. You know? Like I've noticed that they're
celebrity parents say.
Yeah, and like a lot of celebrity people, parents. Actually, the only person I can think of now is Casey Neistat. Is that he just makes a conscious decision not to show his kid's face on any social media until they're like.
Lin-Manuel Miranda always covers his kid's face.
Ryan Reynolds and Blake Lively make it a like people didn't know that they were even having a third kid until like, and the first time they saw the like kids' faces was when they all went out for like Ryan Reynolds getting a Hollywood star or something.
Yeah, I just think it's a very delicate balance. Like it's part of it is you being present as a parent, and the other part is like knowing when to protect your kids and like knowing kind of like where the line is. Like I feel like you can only be so famous to the point where, or like at a certain point it just starts to hurt you, you know? Like sure, you can become so famous and like you have all this money and you can provide so many opportunities for like you and your family. But I feel like once you reach that threshold of fame, from that it's just like there's not enough money in the world to compensate for your privacy or like protection, you know?
It's so strange because that's like I can totally empathize, but that's so not an issue for writers. Like I mean the kind of literary fame that people look for isn't the same kind of fame. It's like you want to be famous in the literary community. You want professors to use their text to use your text in their classroom. I think Donna Tartt is like one of the best authors alive today, but I don't even know what she looks like. Like, you know what I mean?
Sorry if Donna Tartt is listening.
If Donna Tartt is listening, I love you.
Super sorry.
I love you. But yeah, no, I mean, that's just not, like, what it, like, maybe with, like, YA authors, right? Because that's the kind of, right, where, like, you have a Twitter account and you, like, engage with the fans, but, like...
also, Shel Silverstein in the back of the Giving Tree.
I love Shel Silverstein.
I mean,
I will never forget what he looks like.
father portrait, you know, but like, it's not really the thing you focus on, because your writing is so personal that, like, you already get that, and it's like, you know, I don't know, I guess you just don't really go looking for the other kinds of, like, info about them. There will always be people who hate your writing, but the thing is, like...
I love reading Goodreads reviews.
That's what I was gonna say, right?
Goodreads reviews, wow.
Yeah, but it's just so, like, you almost learn to, like, discount that kind of stuff as a writer, because you grow up seeing, like you could click on a Faulkner novel on Goodreads, and it'll be, like, 3 stars, and people are like, worst book I've ever read. I'm like, it's fucking Faulkner, like, shut up. And, like, the fact that you achieve enough literary veneration for people to go about criticizing you, it's like, well, it's like, you're criticizing me, but I've achieved my goal by being that known. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
and, like,
that's true. When
you read, like, literary criticism of your work that's valid, it's like, okay, this is great. It can help me improve my writing. But, like, as a writer, like, if someone's like, this book is boring, like, it just wouldn't really affect me, because I'd be like, well, enough people read it that it clearly isn't. And also, like, a lot of literature, people consider it boring, and it's just because they don't really, like, care that much about it, right? So,
yeah, like,
I don't know.
Like, kind of, like, to each their own genre and stuff.
Yeah, like, the only kind of hate that's threatening to a writer isn't, like, the fans, it's the publishers, and, like, sending your work again and again, and people writing you back and being like, no, we're not going to publish this, no one's ever going to publish this.
Right.
So, the last thing we want to talk about is, I think for every art, there's kind of, like, a stereotype of what that artist looks and behaves like. And so, I don't know, do we think that we fit into those?
I hope not. Well, for me, at least.
Well, there are some good stereotypes for all of them. Like,
well, from my personal experience, just, like, from what I've seen online and, like, from the news, your famous film director is a white man, which is okay, who is very arrogant, I think, seems to be, like, the general vibe, and, like, you know, the big ego vibes.
Yeah.
Which I kind of understand, like, you need to have a really thick skin going into that line of work, and, like showing your film in class and just having, like, people criticize it, it can definitely get, like, really hard on you if you don't believe in yourself.
Yeah.
It's just that, like, it's too much. It's too much, and I don't want to be, I don't know, I don't want to be that person. So let me know how I can succeed, but also not be an arrogant white boy.
You got me knocked out.
Actually, there's definitely the stereotype of the arrogant white man in writing as well. Like, who's, like, the guy in your workshop, and he comes up to you and he, like, asks if you've read Bukowski, you know what I mean? He's like, have you heard of such and such? And I think, like, male filmmakers have a stereotype of being the way, too. Which, like, you know, isn't always true. They're, like, actually a lot of boys who write are, like, really sweet and empathetic, but some of them aren't.
Yeah, I mean, you know, it's, like, it's definitely a stereotype, right? Like, it does not apply to everyone. It's just, like, it's a stereotype for a reason, and you definitely see it spread out across, like, your field, but also it is, like, assuring to know that that's slowly deteriorating as time goes on. Like, we have Greta Gerwig, we have
Queen.
Other cool directors. Well, like, the other ones I can think of are white and male. I just love what they make.
True.
So, like, it doesn't apply to everyone, obviously. Right. But, yeah.
Just to be clear, I feel like sometimes we say, like, boys as, like, a blanket kind of...
Oh, yeah.
We hate misandry. We love boys. It's just that there are stereotypes that exist.
Unfortunately.
Yeah, but we hope we're acknowledging that those are stereotypes and don't apply to most people.
Right.
So.
What about you, Joy? What is the...
Of the theater kid.
The theater kids.
Like, you hear it and you already know. Like, it's these kids who are super loud, very extroverted, and then even within the theater community, you get, like, there are so many different, like, sub-stereotypes that, like, I saw anytime I'm involved with something in theater, and specifically at, like, my college auditions this fall. There's the one who's always, like, pulling the obscure reference out of their ass, being like, oh, you've never heard of this show that was only produced on Off Broadway in 1945? And it's like, I didn't, but that doesn't make me love theater any less. I think there's arrogance there, too, but again, with what you do, I think you have to have, like, that forfeiture. But something that I really don't like is kind of, like, the notion that you have to be a lead, you have to be successful, and, like, you know, like, why don't we talk about, like, all the people who are in ensembles and chorus work, like, wow, they do honestly the bulk of the work for shows.
Understudies are, like, freaking better than leads because they have to know the
They
whole...
memorize, like, 3 different tracks and know it by heart and are able to take over in, like, a moment's notice. Like, but kind of, like, yeah, like, the loud, like, obnoxious, like, theater kid who's always singing. And, like, yeah, like, I think when I'm around other theater kids, I definitely can fall into it as well. Like, I think I've kind of trained myself to be able to adapt to that environment, because a lot of the times if you're like the quiet kid in a theater class, you're not going to get noticed. I kind of have like my theater personality that I can take on if I really need to. But yeah, like I'm not someone who's very like extroverted or like always the first person to volunteer or, you know, or like will willingly sing if asked. So I don't know. I think I differ a lot from like the classic quote unquote like theater, like musical theater girl. But I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing, because you see those types of people succeed and they're honestly all the time really, really talented. But I think I can do it, but it's not me all the time.
I mean, I think that, like, stereotypes are just, like, the bad side of, like, the good traits that you need to have, right? Because, like, arrogance is just the bad side of confidence, which you have to have, especially in theater.
Right.
Like, you know, like, singing all the time is the bad side of, like, being really comfortable with your voice and wanting to share your art. You know what I mean? So.
Yeah. Wait, Naya didn't talk about her stereotypes of a writer.
Oh, yeah. Well, I guess... I think, like, when I think of the stereotype of the writer, it's definitely, like, the antisocial, moody...
Yeah, I think of that.
Like, a bit overdramatic, but, like, in, like, a quiet way. And, like, they have, like, hidden trauma and, like, spend all their time writing. And you know what I mean? I can be very moody and, like... Because I think that, like, having really strong emotions is something that would push you to write, right?
Yeah.
And, like, I say I'm 100%, like, an ambivert because I love spending time with people, but at a certain point, I just need to be alone with my thoughts. I just need to be alone with my thoughts!
Ew!
Right? But, like, I almost want to be the stereotype because it's often seen as, like, the qualification.
But I think, like, honestly, like, with all these art forms, the reason that these stereotypes are there is because, like, there's not enough diversity within the art form for, like, it to be possible that any type of person would be involved. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think that's,
kinda
like,
sad.
for us, or for me at least, like, I don't want to speak generally, but I would like to assume that you guys think this too, like, that's actually, like, a huge reason why I would choose to pursue my art form as a career. I just want there to be much more, like, representation and diversity in the field. And, like, I feel like sometimes our society gives a lot more credit to celebrities than sometimes they necessarily deserve. As in, like, if a celebrity says something, we're so willing to accept it. Sometimes the people who have the most influence, like, aren't great, but they get that influence from doing their art form. So, like, I kind of want that platform to, like, make a positive impact on, like, the people who would listen to me.
Well, I just think that the, like, nature of art is that it consumes your life.
Yeah.
Because it's about life, right? Like, I can't make any assumptions, but if someone's, like, passion is math, I don't assume that they, like, go home at the end of the day and they're like, math, you know what I mean?
Actually, that's what my mom does.
Oh, well, then I'm incorrect. But,
like, she sees math as an art form.
well, that's amazing. But,
Well, that's an art form, you know?
Haha.
What if it was, like, math is, like, a school subject?
well, it's
Actually, maybe even then. Oh, this is difficult.
okay.
Like, you know.
But I think if you work at the bank, you're passionate about numbers, you're passionate about math as, like, a greater concept, but you don't go home and think about, like, your job at the bank, you know what I mean? And, like, even if you're really passionate about, like, the fundamental concepts of the stuff that you do there, but I think the very nature of art is that being an artist is who you are, and, like, I think a stereotype of all artists is, like, oh, like, the art consumes me, like, we talk about the muse, like, the art demands something from you, and, like, I don't know, it's just a very central part of your entire being.
If it's your only job, is your art, like, just because of the nature of art, like, you probably won't earn a lot of money for it. And then you start resenting it because it's not giving you a life, you know, it's not doing what you're searching for.
At the end of the day, I think it's all about balance, you know?
Yeah.
Not, like, giving your entire self to your art form, but knowing, like, when to take from it, when to give, and when to just have time for yourself. And that's a wrap on this episode. Thank you so much for joining us this week, and make sure to stay tuned for the next one. We hope you've enjoyed listening to us, Week Dependent Woman.